Hello and welcome. You are listening to The Day My Brain Broke, presented by me, Lucy Reddin, in partnership with the Encephalitis Society. We shall be sharing with you the lives and experiences of those affected by encephalitis, a type of brain inflammation. Hello and welcome to the Day My Brain Broke podcast. And today I am speaking with the wonderful Sarah. She's based up in Aberdeen in Scotland, and she's one of our newly joined volunteers. She's been with us just for a couple of months or so. So hi there, Sarah, welcome. How are you today?
Grand, thank you. Yeah, yourself?
Very good, very good. Thank you for asking. And thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate the time you've set aside to speak with me today. So I know I've sent you over some questions, so let's crack on and see how we go. So
Sounds
are
good.
you able to just let us and the audience know, what a typical day was like in your life before you contracted encephalitis?
Yeah, so it was almost 10.5 years ago now that I contracted encephalitis, and I was recently graduated. I was working as a research assistant at the University of Aberdeen, and it wasn't a full-time job, so I kind of supplemented it with doing some bank nursery nursing or early years practitioner work, kind of casual relief stuff, and then I was also working at a local pub. So it was kind of post-university, probably a little bit of debt. I would say I was kind of tanking the hours, if I'm honest. And yeah, busy. Yeah, postgraduate, everything was exciting. I was working on some research, which on the back of my degree. Yeah, I mean, busy, fun. I would probably standard kind of recent graduate kind of life, I suppose. Yeah,
just living life, enjoying it.
yeah, to the fullest, burning the candle.
Yeah, well, that's the age to do it, I guess, isn't it, if there's ever a time.
True.
So then, as many of us have experienced, or some of us I should say, not all of us, we experienced a bit of a run-up leading up to kind of like, when everything kind of hit a crescendo, so to speak. So did you have like a run-up of a few days, a few weeks, a few months even, of symptoms and things, or was it quite quickly onsetting?
It was quite a quick onset. So the first telling point was we were at a friend's wedding, and I mean, it's Scotland, so it's a Kaylee, we like a bit of a drink, we like a bit of a party, and I just didn't want to drink. I was wanting pints and pints of water. Like literally, I literally, that's all I wanted to drink. That combined with really, really restless legs, like almost like growing pains. That was probably the first tell. And I ran at that point and played hockey and stuff. So I honestly thought I'd just been overdoing the exercise. Yeah. I couldn't really put a point on why I wanted to drink water. I just was like, oh, well, fine, that's what I'll do. And I made a funny story now, thinking back on it. My husband was introducing me to a friend of his, and the guy jokes, and he was like, oh, yeah, I'm a shark wrangler. It's a job. Yeah, like I just get my lasso and I just like whack it around the shark, and and that's what I do. That's my job. How? And I was like, that's fascinating, this is amazing. And everyone was sort of like looking at me like, she's fallen for this joke. Yeah. And the next day after the wedding, I had a blinding headache, which I couldn't understand because I wasn't drinking. So I was like, well, this isn't a hangover. I don't know why I've got a blinding headache. And then I was retelling the story. I was like, oh yeah, I met the guy who's a shark wrangler. And he's now my husband, but it was my boyfriend at the time, was like, babe, that was a joke. Like, you can't lasso a shark underwater. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Like, I honestly, it was like I couldn't compute it. And the conversations just from becoming an awareness volunteer and speaking to other people, we've had the conversations about how you're almost hallucinating, or there's certain moments that just don't seem to make sense, that you've genuinely been like, oh, that was valid for you. So there was that. And then that day I was actually doing a research project for a colleague of mine at the university, and it was to do with what's it called? almost like air traffic control kind of stimuli, like in the peripheral vision. So I'd done one a couple of months prior, and then I went to him and he was like, yeah, right, so we're starting. I was like, yeah. So you kind of stand with your two fingers, one point, and you just look at a dot on the screen and you have to track in your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
And maybe about 10 or so minutes, well, no, less than that, because it's a quick thing. He was like, right, Sarah, you all right today? I was like, yeah, Dave, you haven't started. And he's like, no, you haven't seen any of these. So
really?
yeah, I couldn't see in my peripheral, like anything in my peripheral vision.
Right, so
And he was like, this is
yeah.
And he was like, did you drive here? Are you all right? And I was like, well, I did drive. And I was like, and I said, I've just woken up with a blinding headache. I've actually got a doctor's appointment later on today. And he's like, well, go home, rest, and get yourself to a doctor's appointment. We can do this again later. So went home, basically fell asleep, and then my husband woke me up when it was time for the doctors, and he ended up driving me up to the doctors. He's like, you're not right, I'll take you up. And then I took a fit in the doctor's surgery.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
timing, right.
Totally, so fortunate. So it was within like a couple of days, really. In fact, 48 hours pretty much. Blue lighted up to the hospital. And I mean, Aberdeen's not a big place. We stayed at the centre of Aberdeen, so our journey to hospital was probably less than 10 minutes. However, I say that I have no recollection like that. I kind of remember like getting woken up and going in the car and going to the doctor's surgery, but not really, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And then from that point, up until maybe 2 to 3 days later in hospital, when I eventually came round, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, and that is just so typical of what I'm hearing with everybody that I'm speaking with and their experiences. Really? It's literally like we all need someone else there to tell us exactly what happened, usually in like the first at least couple of weeks, to kind of like just recap, this is what happened, because so many of us just don't remember anything at all. And it's just incredible how we all have such similar, we have such similar experiences, even though everything that we experience is so individual at the same time, if that makes sense. It's incredible where there are certain lines that are complete parallels and then others are just completely different. So yeah, it's crazy. So in essence, the day your brain broke was that day you were blue lighted to the hospital. So you then said it took 2 to 3 days had you actually lost consciousness at that point?
Yeah. So from that tonic-clonic seizure, they said, and then blue lighted up to the hospital. Husband was with me. He phoned my dad and he came and met him in the A&E department. And then, so it was initially taken through to A&E, and I was trying to ask my husband this. I was like, what did they notice or what did they do? Because I got a lumbar puncture pretty quickly.
Right. Okay.
But again, no recollection of it. And I thought I was really always worried that I might have some sort of like underlying consciousness of getting a lumbar puncture, but I have nothing. Like I had 2 kids, both epidurals, and I thought the back of me would be a bit funny or sensitive or something. Nothing. I mean, lucky to not have to feel that experience of a lumbar puncture. And then so they did that in bloods pretty quickly and realized that I had EBV, encephalitis. So I mean, Epstein-Barr virus lays dormant in you. I could have contracted it at any point. Even as a child or whatever, and for some reason weakened immune system, it kind of reared its ugly head, and then they said it just crossed the blood-brain barrier, and that was it. So I was pretty quickly apparently moved into the infectious ward up at the hospital, and
given any kind of explanation as to what may have triggered that, because if that's Epstein-Barr virus is a type of virus that, like you say, it lays dormant in the body. So is there a reason why it just suddenly did cross that blood-brain barrier? They didn't give any. They've not been given. No.
I mean, that kind of, it's funny going over all of this. Like, I'm trying to literally got my notes and stuff, and everything was because I've been so fortunate. I think with the timing of the fit, we had this conversation with some of the other volunteers. Yeah, the fit gets you into hospital, doesn't it? That sounds awful.
True. Yeah.
But some of the other, if I'd gone into hospital saying I've got a banging headache, you know, or I believed a silly joke that somebody made a statement of, I've got really bad legs, you just need some rest. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. And there are other stories where things like that sadly have happened and they get sent home time and time again. So you're right, it's just the luck of the draw how it happens sometimes. It's just awful.
Yeah, but I mean, in the back of my head, I feel like I was definitely burning the candle at both ends, like running 3 jobs, still trying to have your lifestyle and out and all the rest of it. So I think I just had a bit of a weakened immune system, and however it happened, you know.
Yeah. And also, just as a point, I should say, by asking that question, that's by no means placing any fault or blame at your end by having, you know, I just want to clarify that to everybody listening. You know, the reason for asking that, it's not to say that Sarah was at fault, you know, how dare you have a life and enjoy yourself. No. But it's just, it's to just highlight just the randomness of it, I think, is what I'm trying to explain. And it's just, and again, this is speaking with other people and my own experiences as well, which is quite similar. I also, you know, I was going backwards and forwards to the doctor, not feeling very well, but then blood tests came back suggesting with me an extremely, like, off the Richter scale, like high white blood cell count.
Interesting.
So the doctor was
You're fighting something.
I'm fighting something for sure.
Yeah.
No idea what. Get yourself to A&E, and it was a Sunday. And again, I have no recollection of this, but what I do remember is going into hospital and I then had 4 seizures. You know, it's that similar thing. Just by chance that day, hadn't had any of them before, never had it before in my life. But, you know, 4 seizures that day, I was in hospital. So yes, all of a sudden I found myself on the acute ward.
Yeah.
That's just exactly it. Had I just gone to A&E with the doctor just saying, oh, you've got an infection, who knows what might have happened? I might have just been
turned away
or off your trot.
Yeah.
And that's not to make light of the, you know, the medical system. It's just, it's the nature of encephalitis. It's very insidious like that. And it's reasons why we're talking today. It's to highlight that. It's not just to, you know, the kind of like lay person listening to it. It's also highlighting to medical professionals as well, who not all of them will have heard of encephalitis as well. And again, no judgment. It's just fact. So to explain that.
That's why, like, I'd love to somehow get back in touch or manage to. I mean, he's not going to remember the case though, but you know, you just wish I think at post this and coming out of the hospital, I wouldn't say wanted to deny it, but I was a bit like, okay, I'm out of hospital, I'm okay, you know, let's just move forward. But I would have loved to have known what was spotted and why they managed to diagnose it so quickly. You know, it would be interesting.
Definitely. So how long were you remained in hospital for? What was the kind of like post-recovery after you were told about it being?
I was in hospital actually only for a week. So by about day 3, I came round. Back in, you know, pre-COVID times, we were allowed visitors plenty off. And I just remember coming to with my husband holding a cup of water with a straw. And I was just like, that was the first recollection of me sipping. And then like my cousin was there and I was like, what's he doing here? Like, and then everyone was like, we've been speaking to you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, kind of a random come to. And then it was only in for maybe another 4 days after that, released. And then I had a wee follow-up checkup. And I mean, the first thing really was just absolute weakness, like full on tiredness. Like, you know, you were quite grateful if you could get up and go for like a walk around the house, not necessarily even a walk outside, you know. Absolutely,
that's it. Yeah, and that, again, people listening, that this is the extent of it. It's literally, it's an achievement if you've got out of bed and like like Sarah says, you've walked to the kitchen, you made yourself a cup of tea, you know, and you've got back to bed. That's enough.
That's a win.
Box ticked, achieved, job done. You know, it really is that level of exhaustion, and that can go on for weeks, for months. So when you first heard, when they told you encephalitis, what were your thoughts? What did you think?
No, nobody, myself, any of us didn't know anything about it. So the only reason I suppose my husband and family did was because the doctor told them when I was out of it. So when they came round, they said that and I mean, like, the hard thing is, it was probably harder for them than it was for me. because obviously I don't have a memory of it, but yet they were getting told, you know, my husband was almost annoyed at the point in time because my mum understandably asked the doctor, the consultant, you know, what's the worst that can happen? And he was like, well, death, you know, like yeah. So he was then nicknamed Dr. Doom. I mean, he wasn't, because like he has to say that. So and then that was exactly, that was the scary thing, like, you know, the 1 in 3 sort of concepts, you know, you kind of come out flukily, you come out with difficulties, severe difficulty that you kind of have to overcome, or it might not be able to overcome, or there's the other outcome. So yeah, again, we hadn't heard about it. I had a friend who was doing medicine at the time, and it came up, and I think my husband had obviously spoken to a few people, and the message kind of got round. And he'd actually not long finished a stint on that ward. The sister was hilarious, because the sister came in, I remember her sister Margaret, she came rushing, she's like, oh, I didn't know that you knew God. I was like, okay, you're gonna have to elaborate on this one. So I mean, he's quite a handsome chap, and also all the ward nurses loved him, and he's you know, he knows he's quite dapper and all the rest of it. So they were like, oh, he's just lovely. And he was like only in the infectious ward maybe like a couple of like months before I was there. And I remember waking up to a message of him just being like, how on earth did you get yourself encephalitis? So he is a medical professional, knew it. So I kind of got a little bit more info from him and stuff, but no, it was a learning curve for sure for a lot of us.
Definitely. And that's such a good point, because it's not just you as the person infected, it's not just necessarily your family, it can be an entire ward, an entire, you know, the hospital may not have treated anybody with that particular condition before, you know. It's that, I want to say it's that rare, but it's not that rare, but it kind of is, but isn't, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're meaning. It's rare in the sense that it's hard because there's no red flag, is there? If you were able to put out something like the meningitis thing, like, oh, the rash, and this is the telling signs of it, then it wouldn't maybe feel as rare. But because you can't actually say to somebody, look out for this, this, and this specifically, you know, like you say, we've all got link for tangential experiences, but yet completely all very, very different. So how do you nail it? Like,
that's
I don't know.
it. And hence why just trying to keep talking about the condition and trying to let people be aware it just could be encephalitis, you know, these types of symptoms, they're all very similar. I mean, even just bringing it up to date with now when we're talking about, you know, COVID and everything, it's just, you know, they're very similar starting off symptoms. You know, you can feel like you've got the flu, you can just feel like, you know, very lethargic, headaches, that type of thing. So as long as it's just something that is, people are aware of the word encephalitis and just know it's a brain inflammation, and it is something that is, it's rare, but it's relatively common, if that kind of makes sense. So therefore it is something that should still be thought of in order to rule it out.
Yes, agreed. One of the other Scottish volunteers is a nurse, and she was saying that in the last group meeting about just like kind of getting it back in that mind of just like you say, like, could it be? Yes, I know it's maybe, again, one of my friends, she's a nurse, and she was saying, so she likes trauma because she's like, okay, so this has been a car accident, this is the head injury potential, this is what I would look at you for, I would do this, and she was like, but stuff like the encephalitis, stuff where she's like, you're having to almost do, I don't know, do you remember the TV program House with Hugh Laurie?
Yes.
Investigative thing. Okay, I'm going to test for this, I'm going to rule out this, I'm going to test for that. And so bringing, like you say, bringing the awareness to encephalitis, so that becomes one of the lists that they go through.
So then, regarding your recovery, how have things been? You know, what have you found that the challenges have been for you?
I find it bizarre because it happened when I was like 22, 23. So part of me almost feels like yes, you know yourself, but do you fully know yourself? So I sometimes find myself wondering, like, has it impacted on me more than I think it has, or has it not? I mean, I definitely find that you get that whole brain tiredness. There's no other way. Like, even, I mean, my kids are now 4 and 2, and even they understand, like, mummy's brain is about to switch off, you know.
Right, yes.
It's that overwhelming, like, I could just explode. I need to, especially with external stimuli. So I sometimes have to like turn off the radio or turn off the TV and just be like, okay, just 2 minutes. And I like, you almost become completely paused in the moment because your brain then can't actually think of the next step, if that makes sense.
It really
That's probably,
that's a great way to explain it. Yeah.
That's probably been the biggest thing for me, I think, especially when like describing my life before, like I was always busy and managing heaps of different things. And now I have to write everything down. Like I can't function without a list or a view or that's probably been the biggest game changer. I mean, positives, listening to your body more for sure. I mean, you especially when I was younger, you do kind of think of yourself as a bit of a superhero, don't you? And like that whole thing about just,
we're all still superheroes.
Even
more
true, I know.
so now, I think.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah. You just, before we would push ourselves and not really think too much about it, and then just if we've overdone it, we'll just have a lie in. But if you can, it's not quite. A lie-in doesn't suffice now. It's not like that, and that brain tiredness. It really is an altogether different thing. Really is,
isn't it? Because it actively feels like you're. It's a different thing from a physical exhaustion.
Yeah.
But it's a really hard thing to explain.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes I can often come across as grumpy because of it. When I'm literally just like, I can't take any more information. Like I'm saturated now. So
I think that's almost got to do with sometimes it's a point of, or when those situations happen, are they in front of people that may not know that you have had encephalitis? That you feel that more frustration, like, oh, I'm just about to lose it.
Do you know, I really don't know, actually. It's a really valid point. And something that I might maybe be a little bit more mindful of, actually. I don't know if I've ever actually picked up on it.
Yeah, only because sometimes I know it's a case where, well, for me, I'm talking personally, I might, when it happens to me in those situations, quite often it's because I'm trying to hide the fact that I'm struggling. And then I've got that very aware thought in my head that I'm just about to crash if I don't take myself out of the situation. And then a lot of overwhelm of emotions then happens because it's frustration, it's anger, it's just almost an element of being defeated when you don't want to be, and then just kind of like accepting I've just got to do it, and just like, like you say, listen to your body, and this is what I need to do. And all of that sometimes has to be done without explaining to the person you're presenting to in front of, or you're just trying to, function like a normal person, when it's not like the body.
It's a really, really valid point, actually. Like you're saying, like the onset of it is that overwhelming sense of emotion. Yeah. It's like a secondary point, isn't it? And then, like you say, but at the time when you almost have to stand and hold it together, and you're like, Exactly. I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah, that's it. So then on that note, how have people who, your loved ones, your families, your friends, you said, your boyfriend, your then now husband, how have they all been able to, kind of deal with your diagnosis? What challenges have they experienced themselves?
I think it was hard. I think they probably I don't know. Do you know what? I come from my dad's like a boarding school guy, and he's very void of emotion, should I say. I mean, he's mellowed now, he's got grandkids and stuff. And so with him, it was probably never really overly spoken about, actually. It was just like, okay, you're out of hospital, okay, good, well done. Like, my mum, she has kind of been in and out of hospital herself. She's had several like a stroke and TIAs and stuff, and she's a bit more understanding of like emotions and kind of time and stuff. And then my husband, without doubt, it's probably been hard to navigate, I guess, in terms of the emotions and in terms of the just the communication, really having to and just say like like right now, like whoa, I'm just and it's still I think sometimes for us it's still an ongoing process because everything in life continues to change, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You know, you have periods of manicness, and I feel like my experiences prior having kids probably were maybe slightly dampened because you could take control of needing that time a little bit more. And then post kids, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm really finding it now. I'm needing to go out for a walk, or that sense of calmness in terms of before you, like you say, before your brain explodes. But yeah, I think everybody has actually done really well, if I'm honest, in terms of it. I think everybody was frightened. I think everybody got a big scare. And I think that's something that for me, I can't experience on behalf of them. And I try to, how scary that must have been for them. That's, yeah. So I think the communication, and I think they're it's taken me a while to volunteer for the Encephalitis Society. And I think part of that was probably because I wouldn't say I feel fraudulent. That's maybe too strong a word, but because I feel very fortunate that I did get diagnosed quickly and I did have that blue lights in hospital, and so I almost was maybe treating it like, that's fine, you know, I've been safe, I'm good, like, do you know what, we can just forget about the past, I can just move on. But more and more of me wants to appreciate, you know, what we've kind of gone through, and then like you say, raise awareness of it and try and give back a little bit. And I hadn't realised until I joined the Encephalitis Society that I'd never spoken to anybody else that had it.
And this is what, how long? 10 years?
10 years. Mental. Yeah. And I think it's daft, and I don't want other people to think. I remember going onto the website and I remember having a look at it, and I probably was frightened myself actually as well. Speaking about that, actually, I struggled to go abroad for a while because I was so scared. I was so scared about the fact that where I am in Aberdeen, we've got the new reward at the ARI is actually, Aberdeen Royal and Family, is actually really, really good. So I was scared to leave that. So yeah, I think everybody was probably a little bit fine the first couple of years. Then as it's kind of gone on, we've been like, no, you're actually okay. And I am, but there's just like these other underlying things, but like you say, you can appear normal, but you're kind of that whole like swan legs almost.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point that you brought up, and you know, kind of like feeling the fraudulence. I know what you mean, because I almost had that like imposter syndrome kind of feeling where because I presented okay, you know, I went back to work, I think it was 3 months after I left hospital. Way too early now, in hindsight, should never have done that, but at the time it seemed like, because I was talking and you know, everything was all okay. But yeah, and like you say, I think there was many years, I think again, similar for me, it was 8 years until I actually met somebody else who had encephalitis, exactly the same. It was through the Encephalitis Society by becoming a volunteer. And I think for those 8 years there was a lot of being out in the wilderness, so to speak, but there was also an element of, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. And I want to carry, I was doing media sales at the time. I wanted to progress in my career, and it was like, no, I'm all good. And that was a very high demanding job. But it was all kind of like, you know, I'm fine. But like you say, underneath it, the swan legs are going absolutely nuts. And I am 100% convinced that things are not okay, but I'm just not telling anybody. You know, and it's that type of thing, and it just takes the more, and then you meet somebody, and then you come across the Encephalitis Society, and then it's like, oh, right, okay,
you get that feeling too, or exactly.
And it's a great feeling because it validates everything that you questioned beforehand, but it also allows you to kind of accept the challenges that have been going on, or you know, accept that there are differences, and you know, there's now a new me. So how is the new you? How is new Sarah? How have you found her?
You know, probably more patient, to be fair, actually. I say patient, I mean, I feel like sometimes the whole brain overwhelming can cause you to not feel so patient, but I think it's made you more understanding, hasn't it, of like what exactly we're speaking about, how you don't necessarily see how somebody else is feeling or in that moment or whatever. I feel like that's a really strong positive to have come out of it, in terms of looking at the world a little bit differently. And do you know, that sense of being able to pause and be like, appreciative of the health and stuff, and that feeling, that sense of I can do this, you know, and knowing, like, trying to stand your limits more, I think. But like you say, 3 months later you're back to work and you're like, no, that's all been and done, and I've got the all clear and I can move ahead and stuff, and then you end up being like, why am I feeling probably down in a sense, because actually I've chucked myself into this environment that whoa, yeah. So it's respecting yourself a little bit more, I think.
Great point. Love that. Yeah, definitely. And then you say, so for you, it was again the Encephalitis Society, meeting other people. So was there a specific, you know, thing that motivated you to want to join as a volunteer?
Yeah, I suppose just that feeling of kinship, in a sense of like knowing others. And my degree's in psychology. Yeah, my friend, she's a physio, and she's kind of doing a bit of cardiac physio, and said she'd done a bit in the neuro up here, and I was like, gosh, I do miss that. So yeah, it was a bit of a push. I think I'd gone past the point of pretending it didn't happen, kind of. And now with having the kids and stuff, your perspective on life starts to change, and you want to, like, yeah, I want to go back and help and bring the awareness. I would love, like what you're saying about the support groups that you kind of set up. I would love to have, so as part of the volunteering, I've just kind of got in touch with the neuro rehab bit at the hospital and some other bits and pieces in Aberdeen, because I want to try and get the fact that if somebody has it, you know, there's the Encephalitis Society, to just, for friends, family, for the people themselves. It's I can't put my finger on exactly why now. If I'm honest, there's probably been a couple of avenues and a couple of things that have sort of all come together to be like, yeah, now. I mean, and listening to the podcast, actually listening to like Prof Solomon's podcast and stuff, just I kept thinking in COVID, and yeah, some of that's probably hit it. Yeah,
definitely. I think some of the podcasts that Ava has done with, like I say, Dr. Tom Solomon and others over, the pandemic and the lockdown has been an absolute lifesaver, because the work they do in bringing the research element as well as the support and the awareness, I think has just been very well managed, and to let the wider public know just about, you know, encephalitis and what's happening, and how there's different parts of the world are affected almost by different types of encephalitis and that type of thing. So we can actually, you know, as a global community, if you want, you know, we can speak to each other to find out and discuss and help out with the different types of encephalitis that are out there, because even though there may be different varieties of it, variety is probably not the right word. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, strains, like
the outcomes are undoubtedly similar. You know, like what I said earlier, it's kind of like it's those different ways that we all experience things. So yeah, like you say, you can either present as fine, or you clearly have challenges, or sadly you lose your life to it. And it's definitely a case of, in other parts of the world, you know, certain outcomes are going to be more prevalent than others. So I think, it's been really interesting to watch the podcasts that have been put out previously. And, you know, clearly I've been inspired.
I do, yeah. You know? right, taking it, run with it.
So exactly. So it's a tough subject. It's a dark subject. It's a heavy condition. It's a life-changing condition. It's a life-threatening condition. So to bring a bit of light to that, if somebody was newly diagnosed with encephalitis today, or a loved one was diagnosed, what words of encouragement could you give somebody?
Don't be afraid to grieve, in a sense. Do you know, like, you've just been dealt something that is potentially scary. But again, there's that potential, isn't there, that there's still the potential for growth post encephalitis. And it's like with everything, I mean, the world is constantly changing, and you yourself will change, and there's without a doubt positives to come from it. You know, gosh, it's difficult. I mean, I'm trying to think even what I would want to be told. I think definitely try to accept it. And I think with the Encephalitis Society, if you can reach out, or just do a little bit of reading from it of yourself, and just start to kind of compute it in your own mind. And then, yeah, it's life changing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative life changing. Do you know, like, and I do think it can make you an empathetic person for sure. And, you know, gosh, I don't know why I'm emotional about it. I wouldn't want people to feel so scared, you know, especially with the research and stuff that they're doing, and the way that the society is growing, and you absolutely will find your feet in the world again, without doubt. And I don't know, Lucy, tough one.
No, that's absolutely, I love what you just said there, because it is a case of allowing yourself to grieve. I think is just so important, and allowing yourself to mourn that loss, because that acceptance allows you to grow, like you say, to move forward, you know, because it is that journey, and it is realizing that, you know, the challenges, what you know, whether you know that you're going to have to face challenges or not. It's just a case of, you just, you know, once you're dealt that diagnosis, it's incredibly scary. It's an incredibly scary time for everybody involved. And I think kind of like, yeah, you're right, you need to just take time with that to absorb it. So I think I absolutely agree. Take time, read information yourself, not to be scared by it, but to be informed.
Yes.
So you know what to expect. And you may, you know, the thing is, no two people are the same, so it's not like there's a handbook or a textbook that tells you this is what you're going to feel at this time, and in 3 months you're going to be like this, and within a year you'll be like this, and in 10 years you're fine. It's not like that, you know. Hence why you have to do the grieving, the mourning process. You're right. But
that's so true though, like it's a journey. You're right, there isn't a definitive time frame of how you're going to feel and when you're going to feel it. And that's probably definitely something to know, and don't be scared about the time maybe it takes you to, like, just give yourself that chance and try. I mean, it's hard though, isn't it? Like, even in life, trying to stop and just assess where you're at. I mean, so then trying to do that on top of that and be like, right, okay, is that, you know, am I taking on too much, or can I push myself? Or, you know, that's a difficult one to do. Like you say, jumping back into work so quickly. And I think you might start, and don't be afraid of the fact that you're stop and starting. Do you know, you might.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even so, for example, going back to work, but then realizing after a month, do you know what, this is not working. I'm going to get some more time out. You know, I probably should have done that. But I didn't. And again, it was down to naivety. I didn't have access to Encephalitis Society information. Had I have done, it would have been minimum 6 months without a doubt. Don't even question it, you know, like literally the severity of what your brain has gone through.
Well, that's it. There's the multiple things that you do with your brain. You forget how many tasks you're doing throughout the day. Do you know what I mean? Just in general, on top of everything else, like, and all of that is constantly ticking over in your head. And I don't know, it's a difficult one. You never fully you don't know exactly where about. Like, I always said to my husband, I'm like, I remember there was a study at uni where you were going to get an MRI of your brain and stuff. And I almost wish I'd done that study so that I could then request from the information from the hospital to see if there's any changes. Do you know, I don't know what part of me was kind of affected. Do you know what I mean?
You know, I completely understand. Yeah, and because the weirdest thing is looking at an MRI scan of your brain and just like, whoa, that's pretty hardcore. But then, like you say, they're not knowing this is the after. I wish I had the before.
And so how do you know what rehab? Okay, you do your ankle in. I know what rehab. I know I need to like slowly apply weight to it. I know, and you look at how long you take to do that. You take probably a year. before you're back up and running if you've done an ankle injury. But because you can't see it in your head, you probably don't take the time that you should to load it up with what, you know, to build yourself back up, really.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Yeah. So
Yeah,
if there's
it's
anything also we'll say to people out there, is just a case, take your time and, you know, really do give yourself a lot of time to recover, as much time as is necessary. And if you feel like things are happening too soon, pause.
Just rein it back a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with also, just to bring a bit of kind of like lightness, or is there any kind of like funny stories that you may have while you were in your kind of like acute phase? Because quite often the brain can do some really strange things when we're not quite there.
I know, that's for sure. I mean, probably that one about the guy's job and how I genuinely believe that. I mean, to this day, we still speak about it. Like,
that is a good
lassoing a shark underwater. I mean, yeah.
Well, of course that can happen.
I know. You know, and his career was actually a dentist, you know, like he wasn't even like a vet or anything. It was just a completely just chucked out of the water there too. Kind of, So no, I know. I mean, amongst my friends, it's awful, but we do have a bit of a joke. Like if there's times where I don't get something, or like they're always like, oh, hashtag brain infection. You know, it's like it's still kind of like there, you know, that there's times where it's like I'm just not on it, to be fair. But they're reasonably understanding.
Bless them.
I know.
I use music as a form of therapy, just always have done. It's literally kind of like in my blood. Are you the same with you?
Yeah, I mean, a vast mix of it, like bringing the kids up. I mean, especially with COVID, wasn't it? You absolutely had like everybody dove into a bit of a kitchen disco, or, you know, we've been in the house for too long, let's just chuck on some music and go a bit crazy. And I mean, between us, I can't remember, Guns N' Roses, huge fan of some old school rock. And then my husband's really into, you know, I call him an Ibiza baby, loves his mixes, so it's quite
brilliant. That's the mix there.
And then I used to play the violin, so we chuck in a bit of classical as well. It's just
brilliant.
So no, I think you're right. I mean, I don't know if there's any absolute go-to songs that we have. We've got quite a lot of mixes of different songs for different reasons. Like my group of friends that I'm kind of speaking about, there's a karaoke bar in Aberdeen which we'd often go to. And we would love a little bit of Celine Dion, you know, try and belt, you know, assuming none of us can sing, but you know, when you've got the mic in hand, you think you can.
Absolutely, and that's the entire point. I mean, the worse the sound, the better performances.
You know, you're all giving it like, oh yes, with a slamming of the door. You know,
I mean, there's certain notes there that I'm with you, Sarah. I'm with you. I'm going to come next time. Send me the memo. I'm there. I'll jump on the train.
Love it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're just coming to the end, sadly, and I just wanted to kind of like offer it over to you and just say, is there anything that you'd like to end with? Anything that we've not covered that you'd like to say, or just your final thoughts?
Yeah, gosh, no. I mean, I'm absolutely kudos to you for putting this together. I think it's an absolutely cracking idea, like getting everybody talking about it and the different experiences, and just getting that wee sense of a safe space. In all honesty, like everybody can kind of talk about it, and like you say, the funny things that come from it. I mean, I remember, speaking about funny things, I remember being mortified when I got my letter through from like post-doctor, you know, oh gosh, what's the word? I can't even think. Your notes, effectively, your discharge notes.
Yes.
And I was so embarrassed, because obviously with the seizure, it was like urinary incontinence. I was like, oh, I peed myself in the doctors, you know, of everything you've been through, the brain infection. Mortified.
That's the point. Yeah.
Like, stuff. No, I think bringing this place together, I think is a wonderful idea. So no, well done you.
Thank you. Yeah, well,
really enjoyed it.
It's most definitely a collaboration. I can't take all of the credit. So no, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we shall leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. Really, really appreciate it.
And no, thank you very much for having me on.
Not a problem at all. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, you too, Lucy. See you later. Bye.
You have been listening to The Day My Brain Broke. If you would like further information about the Encephalitis Society, their website is encephalitis.info. That's ENCEPHALITIS.info. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Also, if you have been or know of someone else who has been affected by encephalitis and you would like to share your story, please do get in contact with us, as we would love to hear from you. You can email me at lucy.teamencephalitis@gmail.com. And finally, if you're also inclined to see more of what I have to offer, then please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ladybird Wellness. You can also find Ladybird Wellness on Facebook and Instagram.